You probably wouldn't think twice before ordering a burger, fried chicken, or grilled fish. They feel ordinary, safe, familiar. But imagine walking into a restaurant where tonight's special is roasted wolf, tiger steak, or smoked eagle. Most people hesitate before they even imagine the taste. Some feel disgust, others feel uneasy, yet every one of those animals is edible. So why did almost every civilization fill its tables with animals that eat plants, while the predators hunting those animals almost never became dinner? Was it religion, tradition, fear, or did our ancestors simply think predators tasted worse? At first, every answer sounds reasonable, until you notice something strange. People separated by oceans, mountains, and thousands of years somehow reached almost exactly the same conclusion without ever speaking to each other. From the Arctic to Africa, from ancient China to prehistoric Europe, the pattern barely changed. That kind of agreement almost never happens by accident. Some invisible rule was shaping human diets long before anyone understood it. And once you see that rule, a supermarket no longer looks like a place that sells food. It looks like the final chapter of a story that began millions of years ago. Imagine standing on an open grassland 50,000 years ago. Ahead of you, a herd of deer grazes quietly. Far beyond them, hidden between the trees, a wolf watches the very same herd. You have one spear, one chance. Which animal do you hunt? Almost everyone chooses the deer. Not because they studied biology, because the answer feels obvious. But obvious answers often hide deeper truths. For ancient hunters, every hunt was a gamble. A successful kill meant food for days. Failure meant another night of hunger. The deer offered meat, fat, hide, bones, and tendons. Its herd also meant another chance tomorrow. The wolf offered far less. It lived in smaller numbers. It traveled farther. And unlike the deer, it could fight back. One injury could leave an entire family without food. Long before mathematics existed, survival had already become a calculation. Not with numbers, with experience. Generation after generation, hunters remembered which animals usually ended in full stomachs and which ended in broken bones. Those memories slowly became instinct. Then instinct became tradition. But something still doesn't fit. Humans hunted mammoths. They hunted giant bison. They even challenged enormous bears. If danger alone decided the menu, none of those animals should have been hunted either. So, why were predators still so rare? The answer begins with something almost invisible. Every morning, sunlight reaches the earth. Plants capture a small part of that energy. A deer eats the plants. A wolf eats the deer. At every step, most of the original energy disappears. Not because it is wasted, because staying alive is expensive. Every heartbeat, every breath, every movement spends energy. Every living creature pays that invisible cost. Now imagine trying to collect food from the last animal in that chain. You are chasing whatever energy remains after countless biological payments have already been made. You aren't just hunting the wolf. You're hunting leftovers. Not leftovers in quality, leftovers in energy. Suddenly, the grassland looks different. Hundreds of deer roam the valley. Only a handful of wolves survive. That isn't coincidence. The land can support many herbivores because plants grow almost everywhere. But those herbivores can only support a small number of predators. The higher an animal climbs in the food chain, the fewer of them nature can afford. Ancient hunters never learned ecology. They didn't need to. They simply noticed the pattern. Spend days tracking one predator, or find an entire herd before sunset. One choice usually rewarded effort. The other often rewarded regret. For thousands of generations, humans kept making the same decision. Not because predators were forbidden, not because they were impossible to eat, but because nature quietly made herbivores the better investment. Yet even that wasn't the biggest reason. Imagine finally killing the wolf. The fire is burning, the meat is ready. You think the hunt is over. In reality, the most dangerous part may only be beginning. The wolf lies beside the fire. Its hunt is over. Yours should be too. But the greatest danger isn't always hiding in sharp teeth. Sometimes it hides inside the meat itself. Think about everything that wolf has eaten. Over its lifetime, it hunted rabbits, deer, and wild boar. Each prey carried its own parasites, bacteria, and microscopic organisms. Most never survived. Some did. With every meal, the wolf collected more than food. It collected the invisible history of every animal it had ever eaten. Now imagine eating the wolf. Without realizing it, you may also be swallowing part of that history. Long before microscopes existed, nobody understood bacteria or parasites. Yet people noticed a pattern. Certain animals seemed more likely to make someone sick. Not every time, just often enough to remember. One hunter developed a fever. Another family became violently ill. Someone died after a meal that looked perfectly normal. No one knew why. They didn't need to. Experience became the explanation. An elder simply warned, "Don't eat that one." The advice survived. The reason was forgotten. Many food traditions were born exactly this way. Not from superstition, from survival. Even today, wildlife experts recommend cooking predator meat, especially bears, much more thoroughly because dangerous parasites can survive inside undercooked flesh. Predators are not poisonous. Most are completely edible when prepared correctly. They simply carry greater biological risks because they spend their lives eating other animals. The higher an animal climbs in the food chain, the more invisible passengers it tends to collect. But imagine every parasite suddenly disappeared. Would humans finally start raising predators for food? Probably not. Picture two neighboring villages. One raises cattle. Every day the cows quietly turn grass into meat. The other village decides to raise wolves instead. The problem appears immediately. Wolves don't eat grass. They need meat. To feed a few wolves, the village must first raise large numbers of sheep, goats, or deer. Before anyone can eat one wolf, dozens of other animals have already been consumed. The wolves aren't creating food, they're destroying it. Nature has been running this calculation for hundreds of millions of years. Every step higher in the food chain demands more land, more prey, more time, and more energy. Eventually, the cost becomes impossible to justify. That is why ecosystems always contain far fewer predators than herbivores. Not because predators are weak, because they are incredibly expensive to support. By now, the answer seems complete. Predators are scarce. They carry greater health risks. They consume far more energy than they provide. Case closed. Except history tells a different story. Humans still hunted bears. Arctic communities hunted seals and sometimes polar bears. Coastal peoples caught sharks. River cultures hunted crocodiles. If predators were always a terrible choice, why did people eat them at all? The answer wasn't hidden inside the predator. It was hidden in the environment. When grasslands disappeared, people adapted. When forests replaced open plains, people adapted again. And when the sea became the supermarket, they adapted once more. Culture rarely decides the menu first. Nature quietly writes it. Culture simply gives the dishes their names. By the time farming replaced hunting, humanity had already learned one lesson it would never forget. If you want to feed a village, don't raise the animal that eats the village's food. Raise the animal that eats the grass instead. That simple choice quietly changed history. Fields replaced forests, pastures replaced hunting grounds. The animals filling those fields weren't the strongest. They were the most efficient. Cows turned grass into meat. Sheep provided food and clothing. Goats survived where crops could not. Chickens transformed seeds and scraps into eggs almost every day. Together, they helped build civilizations. Now imagine trying to build a farm filled with wolves or lions. Every predator would first need countless other animals to stay alive. The farm wouldn't produce food. It would consume it. Even with modern technology, that equation has never changed. Machines became faster, cities became larger, science became smarter. But the food chain never rewrote its own rules. Walk through almost any supermarket today. You'll find beef, chicken, pork, lamb, fish. What you probably won't find is wolf, tiger, eagle, or lion. At first, that feels like culture. Look closer. And it starts to look like mathematics written by nature. The strongest animals were never the best investment. The best food animals were simply the ones standing closer to the sun. Every meal begins there. Sunlight reaches a field. Grass captures part of that energy. A cow eats the grass. You eat the cow. At every step, enough energy remains for life to continue, while most of it is spent on breathing, growing, moving, and surviving. Now imagine adding one more step. The cow feeds a lion. Then you eat the lion. Almost all of the original energy has already been used. The food chain isn't really a ladder, it's a budget. And nature has always rewarded those who spend that budget wisely. That is why the mystery was never whether humans could eat predators. The answer has always been yes. People have eaten bears, sharks, crocodiles, and even wolves when survival demanded it. The real question was always different. Why choose the most expensive meal in the entire ecosystem when nature offers countless cheaper ones? For tens of thousands of years, our ancestors answered that question every time they aimed a spear at a grazing herd instead of a stalking predator. Those decisions became habits. Those habits became traditions. Then agriculture. Then economies. Eventually, they became so normal that most of us never stopped to question them. The next time you sit down for dinner, try tracing your meal backward. Not just to the farm, not even to the hunter. Keep going. Back through forests, grasslands, rivers, and ice. Back to the first green plants capturing sunlight. Your dinner isn't just food. It's the visible result of an invisible system that has shaped life on Earth for hundreds of millions of years. And perhaps that's the strangest part of all. You probably thought you were choosing what to eat. In reality, nature made that decision long before you were born. If this changed the way you look at something as ordinary as dinner, subscribe now. Every week, we uncover another hidden rule that quietly shaped human life long before anyone realized it existed. And before you go, tell us in the comments, would you ever try predator meat? And if so, which one would you choose?